All right, let's call a meeting to order. A meeting of the Board of Public Works, November 7th, 2019. Diane, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Donches,
I'm here.
Commissioner Ackerman,
Here.
Commissioner Pappas,
Here.
Commissioner Moriarty,
Here.
Commissioner Teese,
Present.
And we also have Commissioner-elect Shoneman. Thank you for coming, and everybody for joining us.
And we also have some other alternates.
We have Alderman Jetty, we have Alderman Dowd, we have Alderman O'Brien, Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director, and others who you will meet as we proceed. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We have administration, and the first item is, of course, a presentation on the Department of Public Works facilities.
Public comment.
Oh, sorry, public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to the committee? Yes.
Speaking of, to the agenda items?
Yes, or anything else, really. Now, probably is there any way you could make room for a chair over there or something,
Yeah.
so Jean could sit
You
down?
can sit here. Okay.
We want to get you on the committee.
For the tape purposes.
All right.
So you get on the microphone.
Yes.
Go ahead.
It's fine, he
Sit-
can
yeah,
stand
go
wherever he
ahead.
wants, he's fine. He'll be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Gene Porter. I'm the chairman of the Lower Merrimack River Local Advisory Committee. I'm also a member of the state's Public Water Access Advisory Board, which had a bi-monthly meeting Monday of this week. You may recall that 3 years ago, the Public Water Access Advisory Board inventoried all the bodies of water in the state of New Hampshire to set priority for what body of water was most in need of public access, primarily boat access. And the Lower Merrimack River not having an adequate boat access for anybody in New Hampshire was listed as the #1 priority. Since then, the city has gotten permits, got a contract in place, and is ready to go to work, as best I understand, with the work petitioned between a contractor and the Department of Public Works to put in a badly needed modern boat access for the people of southern New Hampshire. And so I am just here to support that project and hope this board lets it go forward.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public who would like to address the board? If not, let's go on then to administration, the presentation on the facilities.
Do you want me to jump right in?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, thanks for having us in. My name is Rob Prunier, and I'm representing Harvey Construction Corporation. I'm here with Carl Dubois, who's also with Harvey. And we're here today to present to you our findings. We were hired to help on the pre-construction and planning and strategy for the Public Works Department to assess the existing facilities that are in the portfolio of the Public Works Department at this point. And we did that by, let me just, we went in and I think the decision, the options for the city were to engage architects and engineers and move forward in design efforts and spend a lot of money without knowing exactly how much money that was going to cost. And instead, they kind of came at it from a financial perspective and said, let's figure out how much it's going to cost before we spend a lot of money on architects and engineers and subcontractors and what have you. So Carl and his team went and assessed the office components of the facilities at these 4 locations, here in this building at the Streets Department, at Parks and Recreation, and as well as the Solid Waste Department. We went in, we did some measurements, we did some visuals. We did not get into destructive investigation, meaning we didn't poke holes in the walls, we weren't taking any walls down, we weren't coring floors. We weren't scraping walls for mold or anything like that. We were doing visual and using our best knowledge and historic knowledge to identify what the issues were and what it would cost to correct those issues. We also looked and talked to the department heads and talked to people within the organization about what needs are there that are not being met facility and program-wise. So we tried to adapt the buildings that you have. We tried to add some space or take down space that didn't seem to be worth saving, and adding new program to those spaces. And with that, we were able to put cost estimates together, not just for construction, but we took a swing at really understanding what the cost would be for all costs, soft costs and hard costs. So hard costs are the bricks and mortar. That's kind of the construction side. The soft costs are engineering, architectural, geotechnical studies, the things that you have to put together to pull a plan together. So we consulted with the architects and the engineers that have been consulting with DPW to talk about what those costs would be, and then we tried to compile them all by each site so that you would have an idea of what the forecasted costs would be to renovate these 4 buildings. And please
I'm
ask
sorry.
any questions.
So which architects and engineers did you meet with?
Janet Slemender from HKT Architects.
Okay,
And
Chris Miller from Boyle Tanner and Associates.
okay.
They helped to think out what the cost would be for engineering, what the cost would be for architectural, for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. It was a big benefit to us to understand where their professional opinions would be on cost. So, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Rob?
Yes.
Do you want to hand out those packages?
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, why don't we go around, if you don't mind taking one and pass them around this. We started here at the administrative building. And we went in and I show you these slides really were helpful to us and not going to mean a lot to you. But we went in and we took measurements of rooms and space and walls and floor to ceiling height to get a good understanding of what the size of these buildings were. These areas right here, this area that's X'd out, and then this area back here is not used by DPW. It's the police department, I believe, who utilizes that space, and transit over here, right? So the space we were really looking at was this front space. We're sitting right here in the conference room now. We do quantity takeoffs, so we look at how much space we're talking about, and on this floor, there's just over 9,600 square feet of space that the DPW is using. Upstairs, there's 8,755 square feet of space. Upstairs is a little different animal because it's not really livable up there. The floor to ceiling height is not up. Yeah, it's not an environment that anyone's going to really work in. It's primarily used for storage at this point. This space right here was the space that Lisa and her team kind of talked about. Maybe we can rearrange that space a little bit. And as a result, again, this is Harvey talking here. I don't want to pretend like we're architects, but we can do enough to be dangerous and to get us in a position to give you good information to move forward with. But we would rely on the architects and the engineers to really put these plans together. But we went through and there was a little rearranging of the front office, the front entry area, bathroom area, and you need an elevator. As soon as you touch this building, you need to put an elevator in. So
Why is that? I'm sorry.
ADA code.
Gotcha.
The balance of it would be more cosmetic, and certainly all the systems in the building, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, they all need to be replaced. With that, even renovating that 18,000 square feet doesn't really satisfy the program that's needed to let the DPW be at its top performance. And quite honestly, even adding this addition on that we're saying could help satisfy the need is not enough. So we looked at what the department needed, the administrative department needed, and we kind of came up with, I'll go front to back.
What was lacking, did you think, like space-wise?
So
Like
this
for
is,
what? Okay.
so this is that addition.
For the, okay. to
It's
meet
a
the
one-story
code.
addition that the only place that we could really figure out where to put it here is over on that side of the building.
Okay,
And it would be office, conference, and bathroom
okay,
spaces.
gotcha.
Is that, and just to, I'll go back. That's kind of how, in the most simplistic form, that's how it would lay itself out. Now, the first thing you see is you lose some parking there. So we had to think that out as well. And that parking is already at a premium in this location. But when we looked out front, we were able to figure out some space there. And we were able to figure out how to put some parking in right up front that kind of is a net in terms of parking, what you lose and what you gain. But it allows you to add on some space to this building and take care of the minimal amount of parking. We would leave it to the civil engineers to think that out and maybe weasel in a couple other spots here or there. So we went through, we measured all the spaces, we looked at all the deficiencies of the building, we looked at the systems. We talked about what the program would be needed additional program that might be needed, which is about 2,200 square feet. We talked about the parking lot expansion, and we figured it would probably take about 12 months to get all that work done. We came up with, so for these 4 projects that we talked about, we have detailed estimates for all of them. I'm just kind of offering you the summary. The summary of our estimate was $3.5 million for hard costs. And then we added in all these other costs that are typical to any project that you may address. And the total came to about $5.5 million to renovate this building. I need to warn you that we did not do hazmat surveys, we did not do air quality surveys, we did not do geotechnical surveys. That all costs money. We're trying to not spend money, but to figure out how much things would cost. So that $5.5 million is probably a little on the light side from the soft cost perspective. So far, are we doing all right? Good? Okay. Next, we looked at the street department, and we only looked at the office piece component of the street department. We were not tasked with looking at any of the garage space, either here or at Park and Rec. So we looked at that space.
I'm sorry, what garage space do we have here? I don't,
All this.
No, across the.
Oh, this is over across from the Y,
He's on streets now.
oh, right, no, okay,
over by the skateboard park and.
okay. I thought you said for both buildings. I
No,
didn't
no,
think we had a garage.
No,
Okay.
Commissioner Pat, I did say both buildings. Here and at Parks and Recreation, we did not look at the maintenance, garage, repair space, or storage spaces there. We only purely looked at the office spaces. And so that's why we only looked at kind of that nub that goes towards Conway Arena. This is the plans are kind of old, but we were able to go in and do some measurements and confirm that this is about the size of what's there now. The program, again, we talked to folks in the street department, and we figured out what kind of program they needed. It was break space, it was locker rooms and bathrooms, and it was resting areas for those long nights for the crew. So we said, all right, the easiest thing to do would be to put a second floor on that existing space. So this is the existing space, which would need to be renovated, and this would go on top of it. So far, so good? Again, we went through the whole process. The systems, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all the systems would need to be replaced on the first floor. The second floor would be new. We projected the hard cost to be $2.7 million. We added all the soft costs in, and we were at about $4.3 million to expand and renovate the office component of the streets department. Again, the caveat there is, and there's some old issues there. There's no abatement, no hazmat survey was done, nor was there any geotechnical or mold remediation plans that were put in place. It's there, we know it, we have contingencies in place, but it would be nice to know exactly what the situation is. This is to give you kind of some whole figures to help you make some educated decisions. Alderman Jettie?
Rob,
this previous slide, are those, these beds over there? Is that what that is?
The thought process was when all hands on deck on the night when a major storm, when the guys are plowing, I like to keep everybody here rather than send them home. The thought process was that they try to make it work now. This would be a large open multi-purpose space, so when all hands on deck and everybody's in, that just represents the amount of cots that you could lay out if you needed it. Other than that, if you're looking at a multi-purpose space, so during the day, when you're handing out assignments, that type of thing, everybody upstairs. Because right now, that room that you have, it just doesn't fit everybody. So it's multi-purpose space, got a small little kitchen in it, so that food can be served to the guys or the folks that are plowing. And bathrooms with new showers upstairs, so.
And I'll point it out before anyone does, we're thinking men's and women's locker rooms. We just have to, and we rely on the architects to figure out how that really works. We're thinking more just general spaces and trying to apply cost to that so that you get an idea of what things would cost.
Our understanding, when that building was built, the structure and the foundations were sized to handle the second floor at one point in time. So that's why we're able to do this. We are adding a second means of egress out of the building with a stairway and an elevator, obviously because you get 2 floors.
So again, this is kind of how we came up with projected cost. We have some escalation in there, not a lot, but we do have some escalation thinking that this could be out a little ways.
Oh, I just wondered, did the engineering firm confirm that it could handle a second floor?
We haven't gone that far.
Haven't gone that far.
We're basing it on the information that we received, that it was, I am carrying the slab at this point in time. I can't confirm without opening the roof, whether they looked ahead and did the slab, similar to when we did YMCA. We always knew that they wanted to add on the second floor to their studios. So by the time they poured the slab, put the roof on top of it. If there is the slab there, all the better, because that way they're bringing costs down and not to pour a brand new slab.
We do like to do destructive investigation. We just did not feel, we didn't really think it was the right thing to do at this point, because we can get destructive in the way we go about looking at stuff. Next, we looked at Parks and Recreation. And again, we only looked at that office building there. We did not look at the other facility. We looked at the other facilities. We did not focus on the cost to renovate those facilities. You have 2 sections of that building, and we couldn't remember if it was 1902 or 1920.
It's old out too.
Okay. That's this piece over here, and we don't, structurally and programmatically, it's pretty much not worth saving. This piece is, so in our thought, you renovate that space, but this you take down, so that's about almost 1,300 square feet to take down, and then you're renovating closer to 2,700 square feet, because this is 2 stories. What this 1,360 is just the footprint for the takeoff. Again, we tried to do our due diligence. We're not architects, but we tried to figure out what those spaces, how tall they'd be, what the headroom would be, what the grades would be, to help us put together a number that we feel confident in. We talked things out with the department a little bit about what program they needed, and again, we tried to identify spaces of program that are needed that would fit into this addition. So this is a 2-story addition. This is the
Main floor.
the main floor.
Main floor, you have 2 new offices, a reduced lunchroom, not as big as you have now. But we brought in 1 locker room. We got to find room for a second locker room for the ladies, but locker rooms, shower facilities, and then a new stairway to the basement. And then my thought was to move your IT to that closet between the conference room and the exterior door. That's a lot of wasted space. I think we can move that rack over and recapture that interior space for storage or something else. Downstairs, looking at, again, you need a team room also, so when you're giving out daily work orders and that type of thing, that's there. There's still some storage space in the lower area. The bottom half of the page is a lower grade. There are windows. It's not a basement like the other side is. So it would feel like conventional office space. And then again, sprinkler, because it's not sprinkled currently, a new boiler system, and a new electrical service.
So at the end of the day, you're taking down 1,287 square feet, you're adding 2,900, almost 3,000 square feet, and you're renovating 2,400 square feet. All new systems, it'll take about 7 months to do. We estimate that to cost around $2 million for hard costs, and then the story runs the same all the way down with the soft costs. Again, trying to help you understand what those costs would be so that you can figure out what direction you want to move in. So the bottom line would be about almost $3.2 million to renovate that space. And then we looked at solid waste. And solid waste is pretty much, the footprint's about 6,427 square feet. It's probably a tear down to the frame and the foundation.
Interior
It's in
slab's
pretty bad
gone.
shape.
All interior petitions are gone. You got water problems under the slab already with water lines. Correct all of that, put a brand new slab in. And then I took the program that I saw on what would be needed and try to allocate, you go back, try to allocate exactly what they needed for space in terms of training space, office space, tote storage, general storage, men's and women's locker rooms and restrooms. The one part that we were saving and we weren't doing very much in was just this main entrance with the clapboard that matches the scale house now. When we're done, the whole exterior would be rebuilt utilizing the same frame. We did not analyze, we don't have a structural engineer yet, we did not analyze the current frame. Much like this building, being a pre-engineered building, they're designed right to the T. So over the years, codes change. And if you're going to renovate a building, the amount of renovation that we're doing to this building, you have to bring it up to code. So a structural analysis has to be done on this building in particular and solid waste to determine, because they are pre-engineered buildings.
And the street department.
And, well, it's got to be analyzed, yeah. Street department is conventional frame.
So if you were to choose to move in any direction, that would be one of our recommended first steps would be to get some structural analysis done on those buildings. Again, pretty much taking the whole building down except for the frame and this piece right here. About $1.9 million in hard costs and about $3 million in total costs. So those are the 4 buildings. Now, if you add that up, and I'm looking at the bottom line, what we think it would cost to renovate, you'd be at about $15.9 million to renovate those 4 buildings. Does that make sense? Does the whole process kind of makes, the numbers may be staggering, but does the process that we just walked you through make sense? Yes, Commissioner Teese.
I almost got promoted.
So,
Sorry. Just a curious question. Renovation costs sometimes exceed new construction costs?
in today's world, it's almost a wash. The challenge is, as the folks working on the middle school know, renovations can take longer than new construction, and at the minimum, they cost about the same these days.
And the problem,
And you gotta move people.
well, that's the issue.
Yeah.
In this particular building, I think we found a way that I could, after the addition is built, I'll create some swing space. We can grab 6 people, 6 offices at a time, move them in there, renovate their space, and make our way around the building. Streets, solid waste, and parks and recs, you gotta go, I hate to say it. There's just no way to create any swing space. I mean, everybody's already crunched at the seams in terms of having the proper amount of space. I mean, they try to cram somebody at 50% of what they have, it's just not gonna work.
So, a question for you, in the proposals you provided, did you account for any temporary housing or space for folks during the construction?
We didn't, and there's several different ways to address that. We just renovated our office, and we brought some trailers in, and everyone sat in trailers for a year. You could find other spaces in the city to move, but it still costs money to pick them up, put their stuff in a truck and move to another facility. So we don't know exactly what the approach would be on relocating people temporarily while construction or renovations were going on. That's something that would have to be thought out.
Is there a rule of thumb with respect to cost?
No. I'm sure there is, but I don't have it.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I mean, so, just if I could to speak to that, you know, market right here in the office, for office space, on average, $16 a square foot, give or take, in that range. So,
You do that pretty easy.
right, so just do the math on that.
Trailer costs, you know, a 40-foot trailer, we'd have to break it up, people will be working kind of like cubicles. That'll run about $400 a month rental, but by the time you get it set up, there's probably $2,500, $3,000 to deliver it, set it up, skirt it, insulate the bottom, all of that. And then you still got connection costs that you have to, for bathrooms and stuff like that.
You know, could that cost you 30, 40, 50,000 bucks for the whole program? Maybe. Could it be more if you're moving people and renting space? Probably.
But it's an additional cost.
It is an additional cost.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, was there some kind of a narrative for the needs and the number of employees when you went ahead and started this, or?
We were pretty much renovating what was there to bring it up to the standards that, we're not talking about crazy buildings here, we're talking about pretty simple buildings and program and aesthetics, if you will. Systems are ridiculously expensive now to replace. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection. It's mind-boggling how much it costs these days to take those systems out and replace them with new, modern-day systems. So we pretty much had the basics. We did put some contingency into the numbers to try and cover some things. What that is, we're not sure yet. But we feel pretty good, Commissioner Pappas, about understanding what the basic needs were to get these buildings up and running to modern-day standards. We use historic data from the many, many buildings that we renovate. We feel like we have a strong position in the market, and we can leverage those subcontractor costs. So we talk to subs a little bit about these buildings. So we feel there is some science behind what we're telling you here. We didn't necessarily have a program that was developed by the architect. We had some idea, and at each building we talked to staff about what they need at a minimum, and we tried to squeeze that in as best we could into their existing facilities.
So when you were coming up with needs, were you aware that a good portion of our rank and file are in the field a good portion of the time?
We were. I mean, we're dealing with the information that's on paper now. But we talked to each of the directors and
Plus we had the guide of what you did on Berkshire, looking at Berkshire. And what was it? So it was a matter of talking with Lisa and the department heads, looking at Birch Street. I mean, that's really how we came up with where we are.
Use Burke Street as a model?
Just in terms of space and quantity and what you need. In terms of the different departments. Now granted, the problem is you get inefficiencies by doing 4, 5, 6 different buildings versus maybe not. But we can talk about that too.
So what are you assuming regarding either the replacement or just using current HVAC systems?
There's nothing gonna be reused.
So in this building, you'd replace everything?
Brand new. Yeah, you have to go brand new. If you're gonna put any money into this, you gotta put in new systems. I mean, it just doesn't make any longer sense to spend any money and leave the old systems in place. So, and this is one of the buildings that is sprinkled. A number of these buildings aren't even sprinkled. Solid waste isn't, Parks and Recs isn't, so kind of get some fire protection in the buildings.
Commissioner Moriarty?
On the Park and Rec building concept design there, you had a conference room in the basement, so is
It's
that
not a basement,
It's kind of a split.
it's a split, it's walkout, it's that whole lower level.
up?
It'd be like looking out this window here, you wouldn't know that you were.
So I just want to make sure it was handicap accessible, so.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it is.
Kind of coming in from both, the topography, we're playing with the given topography. We're not trying to mess around with that at all. So it would be accessible. But, so there's one other question, and that is, well, we kind of thought about, we sat around the table and we were giving comments in terms of the program of renovating these 4 buildings. Certainly, we understand that's a lot of money. Even after we completed, even if you said, let's go with this, and we completed these 4 buildings, there really isn't any opportunity for growth, and we're not 100% certain that you can get all the program that you absolutely need in each of these departments in the space of existing buildings. There's very little capacity at these sites. The equipment at the street department is going to be a challenge. Again, we weren't tasked with talking about or looking into the garage or the maintenance and repair areas, but we do know that when you have to bring your equipment back from Burke Street, that's going to put a pinch on the street department in a big way. And again, those costs that we did not get drilled down into in terms of temporary relocation, hazmat surveys. We're worried, we are concerned about mold. It's visual, and you see it when you walk up to this building. And we carried escalation through 2020. So we did not, if we carried escalation beyond 2020, it would scare the daylights out of you, as if you're not scared enough as it is with these costs. Then we said, what if you did build a new building? And Janet had put together some real initial programming opportunities for us to really, she kind of looked at all the departments and what the spaces were, and it was just under 25,000 square feet. So we figured, okay, if you can build a 2-story building, a footprint of 12,500 and a real simple box, we projected the cost would be about $300 a square foot, or $7.5 million. And then when you add all the soft costs with that, you're at about $9.9 million for a new building. There are a lot of, again, we built a lot of buildings this size, so we know exactly how much these buildings cost. That makes it even easier for us because it's a blank palette. A new building would offer a lot of positives for the department. You'd create a healthy environment right away. Your utility costs would most definitely go down. You would be able to work that program so that it was the best possible program for the department to work in and to service the city in the best possible way. There's ways to bring in energy efficiencies. I don't know if the Joint Special wants to talk about solar or not, but solar being one of those great options. When you add up the durations for each, so it was 12 months for this building and 7 months for the other 3, you're talking about over 30 months of construction activity versus 12 in a new building. And I think, I don't necessarily want to talk to the operational side of things, but I think being in a unified spot, there's a lot of positives that can come out of being together and working together instead of being all over the place.
And are you building in enough strength to put a solar array on the roof?
As much as you can get on 12,500 square feet.
Right.
Or around it. I mean, I don't,
And is
that's
it
just a thought. It's the opportunity
Is it
to
a
do
flat
that.
roof or a slanted roof? What is it?
We're thinking a flat roof. We're trying to keep this as
Cheaper to build.
simple as possible.
Cheaper to build.
It is cheap. It is the least expensive geometry to build. So that's kind of where this task took us. We hope that it gives you some solid information for discussion and to help you make decisions on what you want to do. I think these buildings are tired. They need some help. You want to attract the best people possible to be employees of the city. And it would take some work to get these buildings up to snuff to be presentable in that way. And I think, it can be done. Just costs money.
In this case, just like the school project, is a significant savings over the 15 to 20 years going down on support costs, utilities, so you have to look at that as an offset to what you're paying for any bonding, because in the school project, it's pretty significant. Also, in the new buildings, like all the renovations we've done to the elementary schools, what you put in today for high-vac systems gives a much better, cleaner, fresher air to the people working in the building. I mean, in our case, we're looking at students and helping them learn and not fall asleep from doing too much stuff in the air. So, I think on the elementary schools, we increased the air velocity like 15 times what it was before. So, much healthier. So, and the other thing is consolidating everyone together probably has a lot of efficiencies in operation of the entire department. So, something.
I was in Sunset Heights today, by the way. One of the renovated elementary schools, it's good.
Yes.
It's very good.
Yeah, that was a tricky project, because when we got into it, speaking of contingencies, we found out that the snow loads were like ridiculous, and we had to bring steel in, put steel in from the inside the building on this, and that cost a lot more money, but now kids feel a lot safer being in a building that'll support the snow load, without having to put one of our workers up there with a snow blower or a shovel and grind up the roof at the same time.
Yes.
No, yeah, ask any questions you want, but this is not
Commissioner
mine.
Moriarty.
Yeah, I was wondering, with the new construction facility, did you incorporate any displacement costs, or would there not be any?
There would not be any, because we would build a new building, and then you'd move everybody once certificate of occupancy is reached.
You're talking about relocating temporarily, yeah, you don't have to worry about any of that with the new building.
Alderman Jettie.
The new $10 million building, would that include a new garage facility?
That's just the office.
Just the office?
That's taking the office spaces from the 4 buildings that we discussed, putting those office components together in one building.
However, it would be built so a garage could be attached to it downstream somewhere, but not nearby, not near term.
We have not looked into that.
I have a couple more. So if we have the current garage, I'm told, is not big enough to accommodate storing the vehicles there during the night and the off-season, the wintertime, or summertime, whatever. Do you know whether or not there's land available to the north of that building to build a new garage?
I'm not aware of that. I know that what's there now is not enough space to really take care of all your equipment in the proper way. I mean, you want to get long-term value out of your equipment, and leaving it out to the seasons does not really help that goal. But I don't know. I don't know what this.
Do you mean at the street department, Alderman Jettie, is
Yeah.
there room?
Is there
No,
room? Yeah.
there's no additional land to be able to expand that garage.
Who owns the land
Yeah.
to the north of that property?
There's a parking lot there.
There's a parking lot there and the skate park.
The north.
No, to the north.
I was thinking the west.
You get the river on one
You got the
side,
river on one side.
The back of the garage.
And then,
Conway.
Between the building and the river, there's a
no, there isn't actually much, there
It's
isn't,
not
yeah.
You
Yeah,
got
it's not
buffer zones
buildable.
too.
Yeah, it's very close to the river. There isn't a lot of room there at all.
And look at,
Which
And
direction
they
are you
use-
talking?
you
You're
got
talking
my,
about where the parking is back there?
once you get to the
Hey.
top of the,
what do you got?
The river between there.
You got nothing. I
Yeah,
got,
well, look at
I
here.
got GIS
There's
right
nothing.
up.
You're
There's
up.
nothing.
There's nothing there.
There's
There's
nothing there.
There's no land.
When the Public Works garage was built where it is now, the assumption was the whole area would be available for expansion, because there was no skateboard park, there was no Stellos, there was no Y, there was no Conway, it was all just a Public Works area. And then, you know, things happened, Conway, Y, Stellos, took over bit by bit, so now we're left with what we're left with what it is.
Yeah, with what you
But
have.
if you add it to that, to the current garage, I mean, you know, those vehicles that are parked outside would be inside, right? I mean, you wouldn't need that extra parking lot back there if you were storing the vehicles inside the building.
You still need to drive through, you can't.
Yeah.
You're trying to
I
back
would
a
agree
truck
with
through
Texas
a
engineer.
deep garage is difficult, so you'd still need a road behind it. If you added going north, as you're thinking, you're still gonna need a road around the building. Both fire departments gonna want to see that, plus you're gonna need it for truck access.
That's how they get into the, through the doors.
What you also don't see is, that's an after-hours shot, so you don't see any employee vehicles that are out there. There's 39 spreaders for the trucks that are stored currently at Burke Street and the nose and wings.
Yeah.
That we're already over capacity.
And the other thing is, if you added onto this building to make that a maintenance facility, you're gonna have to spend a fortune on the existing facility to bring it up to what it has to be, if you even can.
No, if we're talking about building a new building, a $10 million building in a different location that is not going to have a garage, you're still gonna be left with an inadequate garage.
For now.
That's gonna have to be dealt with at some point in time.
Well,
And I'm just exploring the
Yeah.
idea of,
No, I understand
is
what
this garage available for renovation in the future?
I would say that there's probably not an answer for that right now, because it hasn't been studied.
I think when we were looking at it as a committee, there is space, if you build the office building, there is space, adequate space to build a garage big enough to house all the equipment. It's just, we have to be careful with spending right now, right, Jim?
I would just like to point out to Alderman Jettie and Commissioner Moriarty, you bring it up and look at the other things, it's like, if we were to move to the landfill facility, the police department may have an interest, because they're just adjacent, as we all know, to this property. So they may show keen interest, so that's a good swap right there, because I'm sure they're tight equally as well over there. And then if we look at the DPW facility, well, let's face it, that area there now is, like the mayor said, has repurposed into a sports complex in a way, between the Y, Stellar Stadium. And so another opportunity may be to expand Conway there, which would greatly enhance the youth programs in the city. So, all for naught, yes, you're getting the DPW garage, but you're repurposing the land here that I think would have great benefit to the city as well.
And Conway be at their expense, not the city's.
And then also, if I may throw in, Greeley Park, it's not gonna get any bigger, but that area there that's taken up by Park Rec could be repurposed equally as well up there to enhance Greeley Park facility.
So speaking of the landfill site, is there, have you looked, is there enough land there?
There's enough land there, yeah.
Is it capable of handling these buildings?
From a land perspective, yeah, I think it is. It definitely is, I shouldn't say, that people have looked at it.
Definitely flat, which is a good start.
And the building, we think it's buildable. We've had talks with the folks at
Yeah.
street department. I mean, it's solid waste, and they have a good understanding of what the soils are like, and yeah, it's a buildable location. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So the bottom line is that your estimate is that it would cost $6 million more to renovate current facilities than to consolidate at the landfill.
Six plus,
Plus.
because like I said, without any structural analysis done on the building, there's still some unanswered questions that have to be answered to give you a true
In
picture.
terms of renovation. We did do on this building a structural analysis, somebody did, an architectural firm, to determine whether it could accommodate a solar array, and the answer was no, it
No.
wasn't strong. Now, I don't know how that affects anything that you're talking about.
Tells you a lot.
Probably tells us that we should have added some more money on the structural side of things.
So, some of my questions were the same as Alderman Jettie. So we're gonna be spending all this money and we're not gonna get a new garage. How close is this in proximity to the to the neighbors?
It's not in that buffer area you're thinking about where we bought the houses. It's not in that area at all.
No, I know, I understand it's not in that area. I'm asking the distance from neighbors who live there.
We really looked at it as whether it was built here, there, anywhere, what would it cost to build a 25,000 square foot building?
So you didn't look in proximity to homes?
So I believe, we're talking over here somewhere?
No.
No,
Right where the,
Jeff.
Don't touch the screen, don't touch the screen.
I know.
The office building area would be built right in here. So here's our existing building. I'm stepping over.
Truth be told, everybody, every time you touch the screen.
Touch the screen, something
it goes
happens.
right back to where, the very beginning, so. I learned my
So
lesson.
just almost in the same location that the existing building is, just sort of behind it.
but you can see how far away the street is. It's way up in the corner, left corner.
That's a civil engineering exercise.
It hasn't been like that here.
So again, we were just trying to say, okay, this is what it would cost to renovate, this is what it would cost to build a new building, to give you that ammunition to think it out.
And no traffic study has been done?
Where's Wayne?
Wayne's on your right
Do
shoulder.
you want to speak to that just a little bit?
You know, how much do you want me to speak to it?
Well,
Okay.
This is,
Just-
now why don't
oh,
you
just-
introduce yourself so people know who you are?
I'm one of the senior traffic engineer from the Division of Public Works. The director asked if I could do a traffic impact study for the location of Public Works. So I went out and, well, first tried to figure out exactly what we were going to look at. And as far as the traffic, we put in a request to the National Regional Planning Commission for, to help us with the traffic counts. So we did all kinds of traffic counts on Riverside Street, West Hollis Street. We did counts coming in and out of the DPW admin building, the parking lot. We did counts at the street department prior to going into the garage, at the gate there. And we did counts at all 4 driveways going into Parks and Rec. So, National Regional Planning Commission also did some turning movement counts at the landfill entrance on West Hollis Street. And they did some turning counts at the entrance out here. So we took all that data and we developed took all the existing traffic volumes, we adjusted them to reflect the peak month of the calendar year. So we had, for design year volumes, typically the state procedures want to analyze the highest month of the year. So we adjusted all the traffic volumes up. So now we have all the traffic volumes on West Hollis Street along the landfill in the area where we want to put the relocate Public Works. So at that point, we then adjusted those up by 1% to get it to the year 2020, just to give us a base design there for the traffic on West Hollis Street. And after that, we adjusted it upwards by 1% for a 10-year period to have a 10-year build out. So we're, like a design horizon of 10 years, I would say. So then we adjust all the traffic volumes upwards, so we have a base without the development for the year 2030. So 2020, 2030. Then we have to figure out what the site generating traffic was gonna be from DPW admin, street department, and Parks and Rec. So we go to the Institute of Transportation Engineers, they have a trip generation manual that you can use to estimate number of trips of different land use codes. They have all kinds of them. They just didn't happen to have anything for anything that replicates the Division of Public Works, somewhat unique as far as the services we provide. So that's why we counted the parking lot out here on DPW admin. We counted all the driveways going into Parks and Rec. And we counted the street department at the gate going in and out of the garage there. That's how we developed the site generated traffic for Public Works. We used actual traffic counts at each of our locations. And, you know, we had to make some assumptions within there because like at Parks and Rec, Nick not only has his people going to and from work, but they also have patrons and people visiting the park. So we had to make adjustments to kind of take some of that stuff out of there to make it a full representation of what Public Works would be like, you know, if we relocated out. So at that point, you had the site.
So we don't have a written traffic report, I guess?
I think she's trying to, I think, well,
That's why I asked.
yeah, I think she's trying to figure out what the results
Okay,
are.
the answer to that question is,
Yeah.
we do have a very comprehensive traffic impact study that was done based on a lot of traffic data, a very comprehensive analysis. The bottom line, the executive summary version, there's more than adequate capacity along West Hollow Street to accommodate the relocation of the Division of Public Works to 844 West Hollow Street. And, you know, we also analyzed the landfill entrance because that was the nearest entrance to our proposed driveway. And there's very little impact from the relocation of the Division of Public Works on the landfill entrance. So, I mean, that's the long and short of it. You have to figure that most of the Division of Public Works employees arrive at work between 6:15 a.m. and 6:45 a.m. So that's a large majority of the traffic that's arriving, and that's before the peak hour along West Hollow Street really starts to pick up in the morning.
And just to be clear, that's not what we're even proposing right now. We're just proposing the office.
Oh,
So
yeah.
those folks, yeah,
That's why we looked at it.
those folks would
did
need
look
it.
at
But we did the worst case scenario that if
Right.
down the road we were to ever,
Right.
So we're leaving the rank and file at the street department and at Parks and Recs. I guess, I don't know. I just, as far as traffic goes, I know we've got some new development, on the street. I know, that when our workday ends, that's, very similar to when the high school kids get out and people try to avoid this street, at all costs at that time. Now, I know with the last contract for AFSCME, I thought that we let people come back to work, like they had the last 15 minutes of the day to get their stuff together. That to me would pretty much coincide with when kids are getting out of Nashville High School South. And I guess common sense would say that injecting that much more truck traffic. I mean, if you're telling me that the rank and file are gonna stay there, are gonna stay in the other spots, then you're not gonna have then you're gonna have some people stay at the street department, some at Parks and Rec, and we won't have all those trucks there?
that's correct. We would not have all of the frontline staff from Park and Rec.
One other thing to
Time
consider
problem,
is,
probably. I don't know, I mean, I guess we have to think.
as far as the traffic, if you relocated to Burke Street, you'd have had the same traffic going down residential streets,
Correct.
which would have been far more significant than this, that being a main thoroughfare. The other thing is,
Right, and they never did a traffic study
If
for
you-
Burke Street, that's why I
if
voted
you-
against it.
if you renovate the office spaces and all these remote sites, when in time's time, you'll be building new maintenance facilities at all those sites, because they're in worse shape than the offices. Instead of having a central building And again, the construction of the maintenance facilities, you'll have to relocate all that equipment and personnel as you do each one. And I'll leave it to the building construction guys, but I gotta believe that's a lot more expensive than building a single building that's unincurred by any activity going on.
Well, I think if we're saying these are unhealthy buildings and we're leaving our rank and file there, I just, that's an awful lot of money to not address all our problems.
Yes, Commissioner Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know at our committee level meeting, we had a facsimile of what the future site might look like, and I know that it created some concern. The $9.9 million new building here, obviously, we talked about the entrance to the dump, and there's gonna be more employees, that type of thing. Will that include the cost of the actual new entranceway, or do we have to consider that as part of, outside of the 9.9?
So I think that would include the cost, because that's a lot of work that we can do actually internally.
Internal?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And I believe this is a phased approach, right? So we're just kind of starting to take a bite out of this big problem and develop a plan that will ultimately lead towards solving the overall problem.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna spend all this money, the schools are, we're not gonna have any bonding left to bond, because the schools are gonna cost so much. And if we're saying that these sites are unhealthy, and we're leaving our rank and file, then we're just taking over more space, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's time to solve the problem totally, because it sounds like the facilities that are in the worst shape we're not gonna touch, and people are still gonna be there, and I don't think that's a good
true either
approach.
way, isn't it? I mean, the worst shape is the garage, that's gonna be the same garage either way.
Parks and Rec, well, it's pretty bad. But you're still gonna have people there, so, in other words, we're gonna spend all this money, and then we're really not, we don't have, what I would like an approach to be is to solve the whole thing. All right, how much is it gonna cost to fix all our problems, rather than, I really don't think that this is a great approach to take. I think that we should bite the bullet and find out how much it's gonna be to just fix all our facilities, or if you're looking for a new facility, then say, okay, how much is it gonna cost to send everyone over there?
We know it would be way north of $50 million. Alderman Jettie.
So so when you went through the cost of renovating, when you talked about the street department building, yeah.
Where do you want me to go?
I guess there would be okay. I mean, so some of the problems that you identified with the street department building was the office part, correct? And you talked about improving the facilities, have better locker rooms, a place for the workers to rest, when they're there plowing. But if we build this new building, the new building will only be the office part. The equipment, the trucks and everything will remain here on,
Yeah, I think
what is that, Stadium?
Stadium Drive.
Stadium Drive.
Yeah,
So
we're on.
the garage is gonna stay there, the trucks are gonna stay there. So the workers, the drivers are still gonna be working out of this garage building, I think.
I would assume, yeah.
So the poor facilities that they're dealing with, this new $10 million proposed cost of the new building is not including anything to fix the conditions under which they're working here in the street department building.
That was the task.
So our
that we were-
hope, though, would be to move as much of the office staff from all of the different public works over to the new building. And, I wouldn't make that decision without, of course, talking to the superintendents, but, the hope would be to move as many folks out of the office space as we can into the new building. Now, the ASME staff, that's correct, some of them would need to stay. It's Paisley Streets, but again, they're not there all day, for the most part. They're out working, so, there may be some opportunity to have a multi-purpose room at the new building to execute snow operations. We haven't thought all that through yet, but we certainly, the goal would be to move as many people over to the new building as possible. I mean, would we love to have a garage? Yeah, of course, but it's just not financially feasible at this time, from what I understand.
But when we're looking at the cost of renovating all the buildings, 15 million, I think you.
Yeah, 16 and, yeah.
Change. The portion that you allocated to renovate this building should be removed from that total if you're gonna compare it to the cost of the new building. You can't say that, I don't think, am I correct? You can't say that it's gonna cost 10 million for the new building, and if we renovated the buildings, it's gonna cost 16 million, so we're saving 6 million by building the new building. Building a new building may be the best idea, but it's gonna cost us 10 million, and we're still gonna be left with the cost of renovating
I mean, let's,
the street department building.
I mean, what you're asking, I can tell, the mayor's not far off. He might have a second job as in the construction world. It's to totally satisfy your DPW dilemma right now, and let's say build a whole new facility, you're probably talking about 170,000 square feet maybe.
Right.
Of space to replace the Parks and Rec and the street department facilities, and to do it right, so that you are storing equipment and vehicles undercover, so they have longer lifespans.
And to include the landfill.
You're that's probably around $50 million to build just that garage piece of it. So you're talking about $60 million, somewhere around there, all in to solve your DPW concerns. If you were to just, we're having this discussion, and you're saying, what's it got, I want to solve everything, blue sky, help me out, that's what I would tell you. It's a big investment.
If we spend $5 million renovating that place over there, the garage is never gonna be adequate. It's never big enough. We are permanently making a decision that Public Works will never have an adequate facility. We're saying those office people are gonna be in there for the next 30, 40 years. And, we can't ever have an adequate garage because we know we need 50 more acres than we got. So why would I asked a rhetorical question, why would we pour $5 million into a facility that we know in the long run we can't really use?
I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying.
I'm not saying you're saying we should, I'm just throwing out that question.
I'm just pointing out that by saying
It's not an apples to
it's
apples
gonna cost
comparison.
16 million to renovate the current buildings, and compare that to spending 10 million to build a new building at the landfill, it's really not apples to apples.
That's correct.
Because, building the new building at the landfill will, provide better conditions, it's a new office building, and that's probably the right thing to do. But it's not, spending 16 million would include more than what you're, I'm just pointing out that whatever you've allocated to the street department building, you really have to remove that when you compare building the new building costing 10 million as opposed to 16 million. It's really not a fair comparison.
Well, no, if you were gonna, if you were gonna just renovate this, you still have 3 other. I mean, you're spending that $16 million on those 4 buildings, right? You're replacing that same space with the new building. That's 10 million.
The one area, if I may, the one area, if I'm following you, Lana, of questioning is the second floor.
That's right, that's what he said.
Because it's set up as a multi-purpose space. We were just showing that you could have the guy sleep there versus however you guys do it right now. It still needed space, I mean, but I understand you line of reasoning. I think you're saying, why do the second? The whole downstairs, the whole office area is getting renovated as well, as far as cleaned up, new systems and all of that. So that portion, you spend it here or you spend it down in the landfill. The only argument I would, the only credence I can think to what you're saying is, man, I need that big room to house the people during, all hands on deck, whatever it's called. Because they're still gonna be, they're not gonna drive the trucks down there. I get it.
I think the key was the people that actually work in the office spaces all day long, some of them are disastrous, like the building that would have to come down at the landfill. I mean, if we're thinking about that group of people that are in the office all day long, then the building at the office building at the landfill that has capability of having a garage added to it makes a lot of sense. If we spend a lot of money on all these remote sites, now you're locking yourself in for renovating, like at Nick's place. He's got a horse barn that's over 100 years old, can't even walk on the second floor, you know? The only thing that's usable for is a test case for the fire department, burn it down. So, I mean, you'll be spending money all over town and still not having a consolidated workforce.
Now, Alderman O'Brien has been.
Yeah, well, I want to say, speaking of the fire department, I agree with what you say, Alderman Dowd, but we built a couple, remodeled several facilities on the fire department. What hasn't really been brought up here and part of the conversation to look at is the cost investment to the longevity, okay? You can, like you take in the Elm Street situation, we could probably repair the Elm Street School, but we're looking at, is it worth it? And then again, after 10 years of that renovation, what do we got left? We still have a building that was built during the WPA project and everything else. So the question should be here, and maybe they can answer, is this building met its life expectancy? Eventually gravity takes over everything and the building will come down, you know what I mean? So the thing is, what these guys do, because we recognize it in the fire department, these guys defy gravity, you know, by keeping the building so it don't come down on us firemen. But the thing is, looking at what the 1902 building and that facility up there, it's done. You know what I mean? I think we've got our money's worth out of some of these older facilities and then looking to enhance what Nashua's got to get out of the future. So you bring up that cost factor, and I appreciate that. But we discussed it in our meeting. Did you not say that this new facility will have a life expectancy of how many years, basically?
We should take care of it.
Yeah.
Unless
Huh?
Forever.
you take care of it.
So
Put money
compared
into
to what we have now,
Oh, yeah.
we'll save money in the long term as far as remodeling and everything else.
So again, the life cycle cost savings of a new building has a significant amount of money bringing it back into the fold. The other thing is that if you have new buildings today with better equipment, better construction materials and everything, the buildings last longer, they're easier to maintain. Certainly our deferred maintenance accounts in all our departments is woefully low. And the better we can make these buildings easier and cheaper to maintain, another cost savings. So you have to add up all the cost savings when you're looking at a new facility versus, you know, renovating something that's, you know, it's putting $1 in and spending $100 to keep, you know, instead of putting $2 in and only spending 25, you know, it's that simple.
So we're realizing 3.9 million from the sale of Burke Street. So the numbers we're really talking about, if we, when we apply those proceeds to this project, are $6 million for the new building on the landfill versus $12 million for the renovation in place. Because $4 million will be paid from the proceeds. So the numbers are not, the gross amounts as big as.
And you have a planned approach to solve the overall problem in short years compared to how long it's taken them to get in the shape they're in.
Commissioner T.
Mr. Chairman, I would imagine that we would not have undergone this study if there wasn't capacity to bond a project, whether it's build new, refurbish, or a combination thereof.
Well, of course, we've got the school project. But looking at the bonding schedule, yes, it appears that we can accommodate this along with the school project if we are careful in the way we proceed. We do pay off bonds every year, so we reduce debt, existing debt every year through the debt service budget. But it will take careful planning. That's one reason I'm thinking we don't need another 6 million. If we're gonna do this project for a net of 6, 10 minus the 4 we're going to be realizing from the sale of Burke Street. Rough terms. Okay, that's $6 million, but to put another $6 million on top of that, I think is not money we're spent, in my opinion, and just adds again to we should be reducing the amount we spend, not add as much as we possibly can, not adding to it. We have gone over the bonding schedule with David.
Yes, talked to him just this
With
afternoon.
the city treasurer and John Griffin a number of times. Tim Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I also think it's worthwhile to note that Commissioner Tees put together a very comprehensive memo, which outlines the process that we took, and I think it's worthwhile for the edification of this group to kind of understand that. So I don't know if Commissioner Tees wants to speak to that, or...
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you. I did share a copy of it with my peers as well as the committee, or subcommittee. I called it both in the memo. I don't know if we're a subcommittee or a committee. I do have copies that I can share. Before I start...
Can you pass them around?
Sure.
I haven't seen
And I think just for confirmation, it was put together by Commissioner Tees and Commissioner Ackerman?
Oh, yeah.
They both.
I'll take 100% of it.
They both.
Joel, thank you for that. So just by way of background, when I started contemplating or investigating, if you will, the Board of Public Works, it was right around the time the board was considering the Burke Street plan, and of course it was voted down. But what it told me was that the board probably had given some thought and consideration as to the long-term plans and housing for the 250 or so employees of 250. Is that right, Lisa? 250? 150. How many employees?
About
170 employees. A few things that came to mind during our initial discussions were the safety, the air quality, the aging infrastructure, and then, of course, future growth. And what I've done is I've memorialized what we've done and what the subcommittee did in terms of meetings. On May 12th, Commissioner Moriarty and myself got together with Director Photo and other stakeholders. We met again, included Alderman Dell, Wilshire and O'Brien, Director Tim Cummings. We talked about doing the right thing for our employees, the right thing for the city, which included, of course, the financial impact to the taxpayers. That was, probably the most important thing. The 4 prominent factors during that discussion included operational inefficiencies caused by departments working remotely, the energy efficiencies gained through new construction, refurbishment, the opportunity cost, specifically deterioration of equipment left uncovered, and then the continued Band-Aid mentality versus a strategic direction. We heard that the director said having all our staff under one roof would create some efficiencies. We didn't measure that or put a number to it, but we kind of generally agreed with the director on that. Ultimately, we reported back to the Board of Public Works in May of 2019, and then subsequently we were allowed to engage a third party, Harvey Construction, to do all the work they presented to us tonight. Our subcommittee met a week ago, I think it was, October, or a week and a day ago, and they presented to us, I think, Rob, that was the same exact presentation that we had? Yeah. And I think some great points were brought up tonight by Commissioners Pappas and Alderman Jettie with respect to particularly the street department. But in general terms, $15.9 million refurbishment, our concerns with the current health and safety of the employees, but it does not address the future growth, and there were structural concerns. And we kind of contemplated there were likely minimal efficiencies gained by refurbishment. New construction, of course, is a $9.9 million, did not include cost per location, because all this time we were not talking about landfill specifically. That was on the table, but we were, how much would it cost to build? And we decided that energy, workplace efficiency, and the ability for future growth would be attained by a new property. We were wise to have Director Cummings in attendance, and he educated us with respect to the cost of land. We probably had decided, without knowing where we wanted to go, that building just financially made sense, and those efficiencies that we could achieve, which we hadn't put a number to, further added to the positivity, if you will, of the financial piece. But Director Cummings suggested, boy, if you want to build a site like this to later include a garage and additions, you're going to need 25 acres. And he said about $250,000 an acre, that's $6.25 million. And he and I very quickly came to about $120,000, $140,000 in taxes that would come off the rolls. We'd have to go out and buy land at 6 point. So very quickly, the shift went to the landfill, which was kind of the obvious thing that was been talked about before. But it was not birthed at the beginning that we want to build at the landfill. We wanted to do the right thing. In conclusion, while we didn't necessarily vote on these things, these are the things that Commissioner Ackerman and I gleaned were recurring themes. We care about a safe and healthy work environment for our staff while also being fiscally responsible. Attention to our infrastructure was long overdue. Refurbishing does not address future growth. New construction allows for the repurposement of existing buildings. We didn't assign a cost for that, but there is a benefit for sure. It allows us to capitalize on the funds being freed, if you will, from the sale of Burke Street. It has to be deployed within 24 months. The funds available approximate 3.9, as the mayor mentioned previously. And then lastly, and I think what Commissioners Pappas and Jettie said earlier probably need to be factored into this last point, because it was a very big eye-opener for us, but building a new administrative office will cost us 38% less. So said differently, for every dollar we spend to refurbish, we only have to spend 62 cents to build a new building, if you will. So we ended up voting as a group, and we voted unanimously to pursue, not to build, but to pursue building a new administrative home for Public Works. And then we once again voted unanimously to recommend construction at the new facility at the landfill. We understand legally that we as a group do not make the decision. We do it, I believe, jointly with the Committee of Infrastructure from the Board of Aldermen. And tonight, it's our recommendation to continue moving in that direction with the understanding that we need to get things moving to take advantage of that 3.9 million that kind of gets freed up.
Is that a motion or?
Sounded like it.
I'd like for Commissioner Ackerman, who co-authored this, to correct me where I was wrong.
No pressure.
Yeah.
I think overall you summed it up very nicely. I think it was a very methodical approach to looking at the facilities. I do think that, you know, a little bit more work needs to occur with, you know, how we continue to deploy the different functions, the 4 different locations under one administrative roof, and I think that's definitely a work in progress. I was happy to hear tonight about the analysis that the traffic engineer had done. There's a lot of people that say we don't want it in our backyard, but I think Mr. Cummings had done a great job articulating that if we try to go off and buy a new piece of property and take it off the tax rolls, I think everything you stated was really good.
Commissioner Tease.
I do move for the Board of Public Works to move jointly and appropriately with the Board of Aldermen and the Infrastructure Committee on pursuing building a new home for the Board of Public Works.
Division of Public Works.
Division, well, we're gonna throw a board rule in there for us, right? For the Division of Public Works. I always do that. Department of Public Works, Division of Public Works. And that I also would like Alderman Jettie to co-author it at the Board of Aldermen. Thank you.
We do have Alderman Wilshire, Alderman Dowd, and Alderman O'Brien, and the mayor willing to as well.
Now, Tim Cummings, did you have your hand up?
I did, Mr. Mayor, and all I wanted to point out was the timeline for this, which is very sensitive. Just speaking from a financial perspective, we issued bonds and we are set to certain standards once we issue those bonds to redeploy that money. We are looking to close on Burke Street mid-February. That's going to start a clock of 24 months. To get us into a place to be able to do that, we have to start the bond authorization process now, go through the Board of Aldermen with 2 committee hearings, a public hearing. There are some definite dates that we need to make in December to be able to make that February timeline. So I just want to make sure everyone understood that.
So to elaborate further, we sell tax exempt bonds to buy Burke Street. There are rules against arbitrage, holding tax exempt bond funds without spending them. So once Burke Street is sold, the day that we get the money, we have to have invested that $3.9 million into a completed project within 2 years to the day. And if that's not done, the tax exempt status of that $3.9 million is lost, and that would be a financial nightmare for the city. So this money has to be reinvested in a capital project that is completed, totally finished within 2 years of the date of we realize the proceeds. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to that vein, in discussion with Harvey Construction, that was brought up on this timeline, and they assured that they would be able to take that $3.9 million and use it as the initial, and therefore alleviate our concerns with that 24-month at that particular time. So it's in the works and has possibility. So your vote tonight would help and expedite this process. Would definitely work to stop this clock that we're under, the sword of Damocles, or whatever you want to say it is, but it'll get it going.
Alderman Jettie.
Just an aside, so they'll spend the money quickly enough.
Yeah. And I would appreciate you helping me on infrastructure with this.
They're doing the work at the same time.
So I would just like to say that, so it sounds like tonight, all you're deciding to do is to move forward. You haven't specified that it's going to be at the landfill site or any other site for that matter at this point in time. I'm just concerned.
No, I think that he's saying it would be.
Yeah, the chosen site would need to be the landfill because we don't have the funds.
Did you drive the cost up $6 million?
So I'm just concerned, since I represent Ward 5 where the landfill is located, I just want us to be sensitive to the people who live in that area. And I don't know that they would oppose this, but I think that they deserve the opportunity to be able to, hear about it and voice whatever concerns they might have. I think it's important that, I don't know, they may have concerns about where it's located. It's a large parcel of land, so we may be able to move it around a bit to accommodate any concerns they may have, if they have any.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to give them the opportunity to to voice any concerns.
So,
that opportunity definitely would come, once we have, I don't think we have enough information right now to have a discussion, because we haven't done the civil engineering to know
Correct.
exactly, you know, where we can cite it, but we certainly will have a neighborhood meeting, so that all the folks from, Ward 5 can come in.
and any bonding
Give
effort
us-
has to have a public hearing.
And we have there's also a public hearing, so that's another opportunity, but we would definitely have, a public meeting at the landfill, so that folks could physically see.
I mean, one thing we
once
could do
have
to make
something.
life better on West Hall Street is, at least for people trying to get in and out of the side streets, is if we put a traffic light up at the intersection of this new driveway, not only would it control traffic coming into the from the landfill, but it would create spacing, you know, in the traffic that's through traffic, that would open gaps
Create gaps.
downstream, so that people between the landfill and the highway could get out of, and the same thing actually to the west, when, you know, as far as westbound traffic, would create gaps in the traffic so that people have a better opportunity to get onto the street, which is of course a problem now. And we've heard about that from more than one person, but
Yes.
one person particularly recently.
Yes. And we will be requesting, as we discussed, Mayor, some,
that's-
in the CIP process.
What is a traffic
to look at
light? 200,000 or something?
150.
150,000.
We're also very sensitive to, I'm sure you all read about the fatality that just happened last night on West Hall Street, so we'll be looking into that and what happened there, and trying to figure out ways that we can make that
I mean,
safer.
you know, putting in a light, right now it's like a speedway from Wellesley to the Hollis line. You know? So if we put a light in, it will break that up a bit.
Because you said 150,000.
I'm including the engineering and all the costs associated, not just the construction.
Steve, based on, if I may, Steve Haas from our office does a lot of traffic and transportation work, in particular signal design. That number sounds woefully low to me. Do you agree?
I would say that's construction cost at $150,000.
Yeah.
Engineering typically 10-15% for something like that, so that would be just, you know, master and signals. If you had to add lanes, you're probably talking a bit more, you know.
If you had to add what?
If you had to add lanes, if you had to have a right turn lane, left
Yeah.
turn lane, you'd be having some more construction dollars, so.
So somewhere between 150 and 200 or 250.
Yeah, that's right. 250 sounds more, from a budgeting standpoint.
But the people, to the extent it would relieve or mitigate some of the traffic issues on West Hall Street, I think it's money well spent.
Thank you.
All right, we've heard the motion, which is to move forward with a new building on the landfill, in essence. Is there any discussion on that motion? No questions, no discussion, additional discussion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay?
Motion passes.
So, some of us have to leave,
All
I'm
right.
chairing a meeting
Thank
at
you for coming.
7:30 at the high school, so.
Well, we're getting you out of here.
We're all set.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming. All right, now we're on item V, Park Rec.
I move to review and approve the plan and approve a contract for the construction of the Gurley Park boat ramp with Northeast Earth Mechanics of Pittsfield, New Hampshire, for the amount of $419,495. Funding will be through Department 184 Community Development Fund Grant Activity Gurley Park Boat Ramp Improvements.
Have you got is there going to be a presentation on this, or?
Thank you.
I have 4 very quick slides. I mean, in general, the financial, we have a $200,000 grant, we're matching, we're putting in additional city money, which is already appropriated. And Public Works would help build the road going in.
Nick Caggiano, Park and Rec Superintendent. Just a little continuation of our motion from the last meeting. There were some questions about the dates that the approvals happened, and I did include those dates in my memo. The project is fully permitted. The funds are there. If you remember, we started looking at this in 2002. We started working with Fish and Game, and through a very long process and a lot of obstacles, it took a long time to overcome it. The Waterways Committee included recommendations to redevelop the site. Mr. Porter spoke about that. The Lower Merrimack Advisory Committee is advocating for it, and in 2016 we applied for a LWCF grant. We petitioned the railroad and finally came to agreement with the crossing in 2017, and the grant awarded the project with a total of $400,000, 50% from LWCF and 50% match from the city, and then additional city funding was put in. So there's roughly a total of, it went out with a total of $550,000, which approximately $80,000 has been spent on engineering and permitting, leaving us a balance of about $470,000. The motion in front of you shows Northeast Earth Mechanics. We negotiated with them, and this motion's for $419,000, which is going to leave the DPW approximately $50,000 for material, and we're going to absorb a lot of the site work that was originally there. So that's the motion that's in front of you. Go to the next slide. It just, what we're going to do here, the goals are to resurface and upgrade the boat ramp, relocate the stormwater outfall so you don't crash your boat into it when you launch, develop the parking area into an organized lot. Very important, provide emergency access for fire and police, which is very not efficient right now. Improve accessibility for all users, improve and reroute the access road, and the whole goal from our neighborhood meetings to maintain the natural aesthetic look of the park.
And once this is done, it'll be really the only, I mean, it's right now, it's the only boat ramp really between Manchester and Lowell, right? To get
That's
onto the
correct.
Merrimack.
And but it is not anywhere near contemporary standards
Right,
for public ramp.
it's really out of it.
It's dangerous.
Right.
It damages boats, it's damaged my boat.
Right. So we will have a really nice boat ramp for people to use for boating between Lowell and Manchester.
I believe there's one in Chelmsford, isn't there? There's a boat ramp in Chelmsford.
Pardon?
There's a boat ramp on the same river in Chelmsford.
No, that's been closed for a long time. At that materials plant where we've got a lot of cinder blocks and what have you, that is no longer a public boat ramp.
Oh, I thought I was there 4 years ago. Longer than that? Earlier than that?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
it's been a long time since that ramp has been available. You see boats on the natural part of the Merrimack River. If you look at them closely, they're almost all Massachusetts boats that have been launched down at the Rourke Brothers big 70 parking place ramp just above the Lowell Dam.
I swore, I've driven by it within 6 months, in North Chelmsford, there is a boat ramp.
Oh, in North Chelmsford, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
I was thinking of Tingsboro. North Chelmsford, there is a boat ramp.
A beautiful boat ramp.
And it's a usable ramp, but it's not in New Hampshire, and it's not easily accessible by people in the greater Nashua area.
I didn't know.
I'd use that ramp.
Just a quick question for you, Nick, while you're doing it. The parking, I know we have a beautiful boat ramp behind Stellos today. Limited parking, will we have more parking at this location, sir?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Yeah. So on this slide, we're looking at that shaded area is the swing road. So we are going to take a hard left and head right toward the boat ramp once we pull in. And the what I call the loop road will be gated off and bouldered so that it'll only have pedestrian access. It needs to have a gate in case fire, police, or maintenance has to be done, especially with the railroad tracks running along there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you say, were you gonna try to do something so, because that's one of the areas where people dump a bunch of trash all the time?
By gating off the loop road,
That'll help,
we're gonna
okay.
prevent that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna reduce that.
Okay.
You know, anything's possible. But what's gonna happen is the PD is gonna have a straight look right down there now, instead of having to travel over a quarter mile to get there, and people hear you coming. And the last slide, this shows the actual ramp, which you see on your far left, and that's gonna be the parking area. You're gonna come in, you're gonna bear to the left, you're gonna make your loop back down the ramp, launch your vessel, and then you're gonna pull in and you're gonna park. We're gonna be using recycled, reclaimed pavement that John has been processing for us. So all these paving projects we've been doing all over, the grindings have been stowed away, and we're gonna recycle those and reuse those. And the good thing about that is it's permeable, so it allows water to get into the groundwater the proper way. There was a question at one point about using concrete barriers to designate the parking spots. I don't feel that's necessary, and we reduced that cost item. We're just gonna use concrete bumpers to pull your car up. That way there's no ADA issue of somebody getting out of the door and tripping over a potential concrete barrier. We're excited to get going on the process. Hopefully if we get our approval tonight, I'll go to finance and we'll start working on the tree line. It's about 2.5 acres that we're gonna be pulling some logs out and doing some pretty significant work, but in the long run, it's gonna be a much better site. Yes, sir.
Commissioner T.
Yes, sir.
Superintendent, will there be some sort of like fanfare when this is open? We'll have a ribbon cutting, and I've never been down there myself.
We'll let you cut the.
Absolutely.
No, I'm not.
I think the rumor is that possibly the director and the mayor may come up by boat.
Oh.
I haven't heard that too. Sounds kind of fun though.
Gene will
Yeah,
give us a
it'll be
run.
fun.
From North Chelmsford?
Yeah, exactly.
And
When is the completion date?
I put out a very conservative date of the end of July of next year. I'd rather do it ahead of time and look good than be sitting here in May saying, we need 2 more months. The construction firm is ready to work and use, the great thing is they can do all their work using the loop road while we're building our section. So both groups could be working simultaneously.
Thanks.
All right, is there a motion on this? Has there been a motion
Yes.
yet? Was there?
Oh, no.
Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
I made the
Yeah.
motion. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Now we're on to commissioners' comments. Do commissioners have comments? Excuse me, Commissioner Tees.
Again, is that the promotion there? I'm interested in a respectful way of just ensuring that we understand fully your no vote, so we can maybe incorporate some of your thoughts into the process as we move forward. I think I heard great information from both yourself and Alderman Jettie with respect to, it's not really 9 million versus 16, I get that, and we're keeping people at different buildings. Were there any other points or items that we should contemplate as the subcommittee kind of keeps moving forward?
I think that the traffic, I think to have a written traffic report that's
Understood, yeah.
that's easy to understand.
You almost got a verbatim one.
I know, I was
thought it
Some
was
of that-
good, I don't know.
You did.
I was watching some.
It's pretty thorough.
Yeah.
We will have a traffic study release.
And the neighbors, I mean, I have to tell you, I'm a little bit frustrated because I think that if we put everything off so long and for such a long period of time, it's frustrating that the rank and file still we're not gonna do a thing to touch that.
Okay.
That really bothers me.
So if we have more, yeah, so I think we categorized this one time as like trying to put a size 8 foot into a size 7 shoe, if you will, like, but the traffic report, neighbors, and then maybe a longer term vision. Is that fair to categorize that last piece? Longer term vision meaning because we haven't thought about where those.
So we're just gonna, I mean, essentially, to me, the stuff that looks like it's most squalor is where they are, and I just think that I think that we've done a very poor job doing maintenance, and I bet you that it'll be 25 years and they won't touch those facilities. And I just think that this is our opportunity where we should just bite the bullet. That's my opinion.
I appreciate you sharing that, thank you. And there is a written the traffic study was completed.
It's not quite complete, almost completed, and Hoyle Tanner is also reviewing it, so we have an outside firm, but we will have something to release in the not so distant future. It's just not quite finalized yet.
This is probably not in this particular phase, but I was gonna say, so people with breathing issues, sometimes smells can trigger it, and just if there would be any further expense in the kind of ventilation system we're gonna have to put in, given that it's at a landfill.
Good point. I think that was discussed at our subcommittee. Someone brought that up at the meeting of the 30th. That was.
We'll certainly look into that.
Yeah, that was, someone did say, like, we're gonna have the same problem all over again, right?
Right, and also for vermin, obviously, you're gonna have a vermin chute a landfill.
Right. Okay, thank you for sharing.
All right, any other comments? Commissioner Akron?
At our last meeting, and I was hoping to maybe do this while Mr. Cummings was still here, I had sent you some pictures for the property that is on, is it Artillery Lane?
Yes.
What are we doing from a city standpoint?
I reached out, I think I had mentioned Dr. Cummings is handling that. And I have not heard an update, but he did reach out to Morgan Hollis to let him know of the violations and ask that they be corrected. I've not heard back from, I've not heard back whether those are corrected yet, but
Driven by the property subsequent to me sending you those pictures, and there was at least 8 or 9
still, huh?
construction vehicles parked there, and there's still no parking signs everywhere there on city property. I just want
I'll reach out to him,
be
yeah.
completely aware. That's
Yeah, thank you. No, I know he did reach out to Attorney Hollis to try to rectify that situation, so I will ask him tomorrow and I'll get back to you and let you know. Yeah.
Commissioner T.
Commissioner Ackerman brought this up at our meeting last week, but great props to Nick and his team for getting a fresh Christmas tree in there.
Is it in?
Yeah.
It's in.
Yeah,
It is.
It's a little smaller than the one that was there, but you don't have a choice, you know? It came from New York, and we put it in with a crane on Tuesday. Very busy day, Tuesday was. And it looks really great. It's gonna grow.
How fast will a tree like that grow?
You'll probably get a foot of growth a year. I'm waiting back for the soil samples to see what happened, because it baffles me, and I'm pretty good at that stuff. I don't
What
understand.
happened to the other one?
We don't know.
Wasn't there a guarantee or some sort of for the first year or something? Huh?
There would be if we bought the tree, but we didn't buy the tree. We transplanted it from a park.
Got it.
And so it was on us.
Oh. You saved Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank goodness.
I think you should ride with a fire truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you here for the stroll?
I do come for the stroll, yes, we do come.
Maybe we should put him on the fire.
No.
There you go.
Or dress them up in
We
the
could,
red.
or you could dress as Santa, you could turn on the lights and stuff. Alderman Jettie.
So I did want to say that yesterday, Tuesday, at the polls, Commissioner Ackerman and I were visited by several constituents, Ward 5 constituents, complaining about West Hollis Street. And you know, unfortunately, yesterday, I was told that there was an accident in the area of the Micro Society School around 4 o'clock, and then I guess later there was that tragedy that occurred further down the road. So I was happy to hear you talk about the installation of a new traffic light that might help. But I would, and I think you talked about you're going to do something to look at the situation and study it. A lot of people would like to voice their concerns. So if it would be possible for us to have some kind of a meeting where people could come and talk about that area.
Yeah, I did, the resident, I'm sorry, his name is escaping me right now.
Me too.
He's from Westgate Village anyway, that reached out to me and did mention that we were going to request some funding and that we were going to do a study and that we would have a meeting to discuss whatever options that we thought were feasible, traffic light being one of them. So we will be planning a neighborhood meeting. What I don't want to really look at, though, Alderman Jettie, is changing the current configuration of the lanes. I think that would be something that would be dangerous to do at this point because people now are accustomed to it. And there's frankly just no easy way to deal with that. And I think that we've really studied that. We've had consultants study it. We've had the senior traffic engineer from DOT here to look at it. And we feel like that piece is the safest, but I think that there's more that we could do down a little bit further in that whole corridor. We'll definitely be bringing folks together to talk about that.
Well, there have been, I'm aware of several accidents that have occurred where people exiting from the school, trying to make a left turn.
We can't do that. It's not safe.
So we ought to,
Yeah.
can't we restrict turns to just right turns during certain times of the day?
They would have to do that, yeah, because that would be on, you're talking about coming out of their school? Or,
Right.
yeah, I mean, that's something that they would have to do. I think that there was some signage, and I think that it got changed, or they blocked off one of the, I'm not sure, I have to look at that again, but I'm happy to sit down with them and talk about that, but they shouldn't be, our recommendation has always been to take a right-hand turn and turn around, because it's just not safe to take a left turn. And it's hard to judge, because the traffic tends, to go fairly fast, and there aren't a lot of gaps, so it is dangerous to take that left turn. I mean, ideally, if they could somehow get out, buy a piece of property and get out to Wellesley and hit that light, I mean, that would be a perfect scenario for them, but I'm not sure that's feasible.
One of the individuals that approached Mr. Jettie and myself has nothing to do with the school. This individual lives right on West Hollis Street, and about 4 or 5 months ago, she had a car totaled, and she's lucky to be alive today, where she just lives right down in front of Westgate Village.
Yeah.
She's asking for a meeting where the neighbors, and maybe even the school, could speak to somebody and have their voices heard. That's all we're looking for.
Yep, and we will do that, absolutely. And a traffic light, as the mayor suggested, would help to provide some of those gaps so that folks could get out, so something we can talk about.
I'm all for another traffic light, but I think you need to really have somebody sit there at the edge of Wellesley, at the bottom of Ledgewood Hills, and look at the traffic light that's there now, because again today, again Tuesday when I went out at 6:30 in the morning, you stop there and that light turns green for me to take a left or a right onto West Hall Street, and cars are still going right through the
Really?
red light. Absolutely, every day of the week, every day of the
And
week.
we did, as you requested, add some time to that signal.
I wish you'd told me, I could have shared that with the people.
Yeah.
That's good, that's good.
Well, we
Yeah, we
need to get
did.
the police out there.
Well, even this neighbor yesterday suggested it'd be nice to have the police present when they're voicing their concerns, because to your point, it would be wise
Some
to
enforcement.
just to
Yeah.
enforce it, because somebody asked me yesterday as to whether or not, since that's a school, shouldn't the speed limit be 20 miles an hour during the day when kids are in session? And I don't think there's a sign there.
It is, it's posted, there's a sign going west and there's a sign going east saying 20 miles per hour when children are present. I'm not sure what that means, because, that school, I don't think anybody walks.
There's no
It-
walk.
I don't think
Yeah.
anybody walks to that
No.
school, they're all dropped off by parents.
Yeah.
And, so,
What, and the overall, but the speed limit right in front of the school is what without that sign?
35.
35.
Mayor, I opted up when I also find that area dark, and
Yeah.
there's lack of sidewalks as well. I mean, you can't walk, so it needs to be addressed. There's a number of things.
So Wayne and I were talking about the fatality last night, and we talked about the lighting.
The lighting is not
Adding,
good.
just even maybe adding some lighting might help.
Right.
And the tragedy is that, of course, it's just started to get dark early, right? So that gentleman probably crossed West Hollis many times when it was light, and then it was just
Right.
at a time when it got dark and the visibility was poor.
Where was it near?
Fourteens.
Oh,
He
okay.
had gone to, he was from Westgate Village, he had crossed to go to Fourteens, and when he was crossing back, he,
Yeah.
that's-
And there's no crosswalk there, really.
no. No, and I wouldn't put a crosswalk there. That would just give folks a false sense of security. It would have to be a signalized crosswalk. But if we let's say putting a signal in, perhaps that would be an opportunity to add a crosswalk. In a signalized intersection.
Right.
All right, any other commissioners' comments? If not, we will go to a non-public session regarding
Yes.
personnel matters. Is there a motion on that subject?
Can I have a copy of your pitch?
Yes.
Commissioner Ackerman.
I move by roll call that the board go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A3, Section 2B. The hiring of any person as a public employee.
Are we off, Frank?
Well, okay, if you
Oh,
guys
we have to
officially
roll
come
call.
Yeah,
out.
we got it. So there's a roll call motion to go into non-public session. Diane, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Donches?
Yes.
Commissioner Ackerman?
Can I see you?
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Mr. Fortune?
Motion passes, and we'll now go into non-public session.
Yeah.